Mm, mm, mm. Let me know when you get it.
All right. Got it.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into NASCAR by the Numbers. It's us per usual. You got me. You got my name down there, Will, NASCAR Opinion. Then you got my boy Armani. Armani, his typical location. I'm in a different location. I'm in the low country of South Carolina today in Beaufort, visiting the in-laws. So the future in-laws, I guess. I guess that they're technically not the in-laws, but they might as well be at this point. So I'm going to send one more little link out. So if I look distracted, that is exactly what I am doing. Putting this out. Xfinity Series driver Jesse Little is going to join us here in just a little bit. So he's going to join us here in the next couple of minutes. We're going to talk to him about the Southern 500 tonight. We're going to talk about the NASCAR playoffs, and we're talking a little bit about Jesse's career. So it's going to be fun. Getting everything going here. Got the link sent out. Armani, our local weatherman. What does it look like? Even though I am hundreds of miles closer to the racetrack they're running at today in Darlington than you are right now.
Right now, it is cloudy. Pretty sunny, but right now it's decently cloudy. I would not surprise if it started raining at around like 5 or 6 o'clock.
I got you. Here, I'm actually about 3 hours from the track, I think. 2.5, 3 hours. Obviously, I'm in the state of South Carolina where they are racing tonight. It seems overcast here, but I don't think I've heard a ton of weather problems from Pockrass, so I think we're going to be good. From what I'm understanding, I haven't heard a ton of things going on. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Jesse's going to join us when we get in here. Obviously, we're going to go ahead and kick off today. A little bit of playoff preview, Darlington preview, and then obviously Jesse Little will join us, full-time NASCAR Xfinity Series driver for JD Motorsports, and we'll get to talk to him about some things. So, let's kick it off. Playoff preview. Me and you were talking about, we did our round-by-round predictions last week, so if you didn't see that, make sure you go back on our page and click that. And we kind of broke it down into 3 categories: our favorites, our championship sleepers, and then we picked a wild card. So we've got 5 total drivers, 2 favorites, 2 sleepers, and a wild card. So let's kick it off. I imagine me and you have probably the same 2 favorites. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it is Mr. Kevin Harvick and Mr. Dennis the Menace Hamlin. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, you're pretty correct. I think everyone and their mother should have them as their 2 favorites.
Yeah, that would probably be true. It'd be hard-fetched to find why those 2 wouldn't be your favorites.
I will say this.
Go ahead.
I will say this. If this certain driver does make it to the Final 4, I think that the tide can really shift to him.
Now, is this going to be one of your sleepers?
Yep.
Okay. So one thing, man, you were talking about is obviously the 2 favorites from what everybody seems to be is Harvick and Hamlin. You know, I have them both in the Final 4. You have them both in the Final 4. You have Hamlin as your title pick. I have Harvick as your title pick. What do you think is going to be the difference between those 2? Do you think, one has an advantage over the other? I know you picked Hamlin. So what do you give, what is Hamlin's advantage? Why do you think this year's finally going to be the year that he can go out and beat a guy like Kevin Harvick?
I think it's going to be really, really close between the 2. You can maybe give the edge to Harvick because really what you got to look for is their bad days. When Hamlin has a bad day, I think the second Dover race, he finishes 19th or 20th. When Harvick has a bad day, he'll finish maybe 7th or 8th. So Harvick would naturally have the better advantage just because his bad days are literally like Gordon's in 98, where it's just a top 10, whereas Hamlin's is literally like a 19th. Right. It really feels like 1998 all over again. However, the advantage I get to Hamlin is because Harvick tends to really struggle. Really, I know we've been, racing Miami, for 2 decades or some, but Harvick really doesn't show up come the final race of the season. He'll be there for a little bit, but then he'll kind of just fizzle out. We're going to Phoenix, which is a way better track for Harvick. He's got 9 wins there, but are we going to see that play out again? And I know Harvick finished 2nd in the Phoenix race this year, but again, Harvick has kind of been really quiet at Phoenix as of recently. Even in 2017 and 2018, yeah, he won the spring Phoenix race in 2018, but even then, Kyle Busch led more laps. Harvick, I think, just got him because of some tire strategy. I don't know why. I just think Hamlin with his crew chief. I just think that I think they're just gonna. It's really just more of a gut feeling between Harvick and Hamlin, just because I don't really. I think one is not really going to get the leg up on the other. It's pretty much just going to be whoever's going to be faster is going to win. But I just have it's really just a gut feeling of why I got Hamlin. And again, I got Hamlin mainly because I think Chris Gabehart is really the heart and soul of that 11 team.
Yeah, for me, I've kind of been behind the motto for the last little while that, I'll believe Denny is a champion when I see it. And it's going to be hard for me to kind of get past that mindset until I see it. You know what I mean? It's kind of the same way with I think I said to somebody last week or to you, I said, I don't necessarily think Chase Elliott's ready to make the Final Four until I see it. I think mentally Harvick is kind of in that Tony Stewart range of mental stress. I don't think – does Harvick want to win a championship? Yes. But I don't think mentally Harvick is going to kill himself if he doesn't win a championship. Kevin Harvick's an old school racer. Kevin Harvick knows when he's done the job right. It doesn't – he's not going to beat himself up if he doesn't ever win a second championship, in my opinion. I think Harvick knows that he's made his mark on the sport. I think Harvick is a better driver than Hamlin all time, even though Hamlin's not super far behind. So, I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see, that dynamic if both of them make the Final Four. I don't know, due to COVID, if we'll be able to have those old school press conferences when you've got 2 or 3, 4 of them sitting next to each other. Remember, those used to be awesome. I remember the year when Tony Stewart and Carl Edwards were both at Homestead. And, Stewart was like, man, I'll crash my grandmother to win a race. And Stewart was just oozing confidence, and Carl was just trying to stay calm, cool, and collected. But at the end of the day, hold on. I think Jesse's with us. You ready?
Yep.
Hey. What's going on, Jesse?
Good afternoon, man.
What's going on? How about a run yesterday?
Yeah, not too bad. It's tough to have these day races at tracks that I've never been at before. And especially going to Darlington. One of the most challenging ones. So for me going into it, kind of start at the beginning. For me going into it, I was very, kind of realistic expectations. I wasn't too hard on myself as to, here's what I need to do, stage 1, stage 2, stuff like that. So I kind of went in just, hey, whatever the race takes us. We had a great starting spot, so I knew that we'd be okay on track position early on, and had a really fast car, I think, early on in the race, and fought a couple carburetor issues halfway through that didn't help us in any means. But it's easy to get discouraged in those Xfinity races and kind of forget the big picture. And so halfway through, we realized that we just need to run our race and make the best of the situation. And we ended up getting the lucky dog, I think, there at that second to last caution, and ended up 17th. So it wasn't a great day. It wasn't the worst day either. So we'll just chalk it up. And it was good to represent the Shriners Hospitals for Children, and I wish we would have had a little better showing for them, but part of it. And we got the car in one piece, so we'll get it better and go. Let's see, we'll probably take that one to Kansas. So should be fun, and we'll get ready for Richmond this weekend now.
Yeah. And you actually called us. We were talking a little bit about the Cup playoffs, and then obviously we were going to get into the playoffs with you guys as well. And we were talking about, because I'm sure you guys obviously watch the Cup races, stay in tune with what's going on at the Cup side of things. And we were talking a little bit about we're assuming everyone and their mother's favorites is Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin to win a championship this year. And so we were going to ask you, before we take a deep dive on you here in a little bit, is who do you have? If you're filling out a bracket, who's going to be your favorites? Who's winning the championship this year on the Cup side?
I think it's an easy pick to go with those favorites. I wouldn't be surprised if, by that last race, maybe someone else has kind of emerged, whether it's a Logano or maybe even, the 9-car chase would be pretty cool to see. But favorites, right now, I think you just got to go with the 4. I think Denny's got phenomenal speed, and I think he this might be his year. It's just hard to bet against, at this point, Harvick's like the house, and it's hard to bet against the house. So I would put my money on him, on Kevin, and especially Rodney. They've been there before. They know what they're doing. They understand the stage. I get it. Denny's in that conversation of the best to never win it, and that's a whole discussion in itself. But I think Kevin's got it this year. I do.
Yeah, that's what me and Armani were talking about, and that's Armani. I'm Will, by the way. That's what we were talking about. Is like he's picking Hamlin, I'm picking Harvick, and I was just thinking I've come to the mindset of I can't kind of buy into Denny until I see it actually happen. And I mean, Denny is so good, but every year it's kind of like you expect something to happen.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Until I see him cross that hurdle, I can't really do it. And I know, Armani, you were going to talk a little bit. I know you had a couple of championship sleepers, Armani. Who do you think is kind of going to potentially bite those favorites?
So we're going into sleepers. One sleep – he's probably the quietest driver, Brad Keselowski, for really one reason. I think he's the best short track driver currently in 2020. He won at Bristol with the 750 horsepower package. He dominated New Hampshire. We haven't seen Hamlin or Harvick win with the 750 horsepower package until Dover. So remember, all those wins are with the 550 horsepower package. And Keselowski, I believe, won a stage in the Phoenix race. I think he won stage 2. So I think if Keselowski can get to the Final Four, I think that big 2 turns into a big 3 really quickly because Keselowski's been probably one of, if not the best driver with the short track package.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That's something that I think maybe people are forgetting this year more than others is Phoenix is a hard track. Like it is a very difficult track. And unlike Homestead where, the car and the team made up a big amount, at Phoenix, the driver, I think, makes up a lot. And
right.
that's one that, it's looking at Kevin's success there. It's so hard to, not say that he's going to be really good if he can get to the Final Four. I agree with you is looking at that track a lot more, looking at the track a lot more importantly than in the years past.
Yeah, and the guys I was looking at is, when we made our Final Four predictions last week, and obviously me and him both had Harvick and Hamlin, but my other two were Logano, and people think I'm crazy, and I'm sticking with my prediction because I made this in January, is I still think Kyle Busch, like you can't count that guy out until he's gone. And so, you look at the first round, Kyle's ran pretty solid at Darlington. Bristol's obviously, we all know the history at Bristol. We all know him competing for a win at Richmond's nothing new. I mean, he's won at all these places. The second round, is going to be, I think, where Kyle, where he could stumble, I guess. I think Kansas is in the second round, and I know he used to have terrible luck at Kansas. You never know what's going to happen at Dega. So, we'll see. I have confidence that Kyle can still make a push. And then Joey, I think Joey and the 22 team, they can flip that switch at any time. They've been running really, really quiet, but it's sort of reminiscent of when he won the title a few years ago. He was kind of quiet. You didn't really think about him anywhere. And then lo and behold, there he is, wins Martinsville and makes a run for it. Yeah. And so, Jesse, dig into your hat here. Me and him also made a wild card pick. Like, who do you think is a guy, and I know you mentioned Chase Elliott, who do you think is a guy that people aren't kind of talking about that you think could maybe cook some magic up and make a push?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it might not be so much as a wild card as just someone that's kind of been slept on, and I think that's Martin Truex Jr. I think, his finishes have been there so often. Now they have just been off a little bit, and to get to that level, to get to that point of being in the championship discussions like Denny and Kevin, you have to be perfect every single weekend. And I think they've just been off a little bit, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if come, October, beginning of October into this month, all of a sudden he's on everyone's radar and he's a favorite to go to Phoenix. I think, like I said, that wouldn't be too much of a wild card, but my one that I think is capable of it is him.
Oh, yeah, I think the 19 team – I think the only thing I've said is when Pern left, I feel like – and I think this has been spot on – is they've been a step behind where they were. And I just you can't lose a guy like Cole Pern and just overnight expect that to switch.
Yeah,
That's the only thing I think.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think that's, probably why one could argue that they've just been off that little bit all year.
Yep.
Is with his departure.
And I know Armani, who was your wild card? I know mine was Ryan Blaney, because I feel like if they can just put the finishes together, Ryan can get there. Armani, who'd you have for your sort of quote unquote wild card?
My wild card was Alex Bowman, just because we're going to tracks where before the pandemic and even like after the pandemic, Bowman has just been really, really strong at. He could have won Vegas. Talladega, he's really good at. Bristol, he's really good at. I'm thinking of tracks like Kansas, the Roval, Martinsville. He's got a lot of tracks where if they could just rekindle that early season speed that they had, they can really make a deep push. The problem with Bowman is that Bowman is kind of like in the sense of Ryan Blaney. He's just extremely inconsistent. So I think if they can just get that speed and get the finishes, Bowman can really just like sneak up on everyone's radar once again.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah, I'd be surprised to see the 88 do that, but I mean, Alex has shown there. I mean, there's weeks where Alex can run up front with anybody. So yeah. I think Hendrick as a whole is going to have to do some work if they're really going to make a push, but I think it'd be cool to see it. So obviously kind of moving away from the playoffs, we know the obvious in the room, one of the best and coolest weekends of the year. And then just add on top of it throwback weekend. Now add on top of it the playoffs. I mean, Darlington is already a crown jewel event, the Southern 500. Jesse, I'm sure you grew up going to this race and watching this race, and I know it's a big – even today I count it as one of the few crown jewels that are still left on the schedule. Kind of explain you as a driver, and I imagine one day you hope to run in the Southern 500. Like, what does that Southern 500 mean to you and your family and just racing in general?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a crown jewel, and I think that might get overlooked at times, and being that we may race this, we've already raced this track once before. It might be a little different once before this year, but for the Southern 500, I think you have to just appreciate the history that it is. I know the first time I went there and raced, driving through the tunnel, and you immediately realize that for the last 60 years, essentially, every name that you have ever heard as a driver, did something, you've heard of them because they were good there. And that's kind of what I like to equate it as, is you're looked at differently when you win and can take home that trophy. It's so demanding. It's so challenging. I rode home with my dad yesterday from the track, and we were even talking about just the difficulty of it is unlike any other oval in the sense of the speed you carry, the differences of the corners, how you have to run the line, and it encompasses all of those things that I think make it so special. Yeah, it's got a lot of history, and we've been racing there, but still to this day, with all the technology and people that we can bring to these race cars, it's still so hard, and I think that's what's cool about it.
Yeah. Armani, what you got?
Yeah, the Southern 500, I feel like it's kind of lost its luster, especially as of recently. I don't know, it just doesn't have that vibe as a crown jewel anymore, in my opinion. But like Jesse, I think Jesse hit it spot on, just like the prestige of this race. Actually, has this race been around longer than the Daytona 500, I think?
I think it was. I don't know if it was a NASCAR sanctioned event before the 500, but I think it had. I know they've been racing here for like early 50s for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I think it's been really cool. I mean, I've been to Darlington a handful of times, and I think it's, to me, what would put it even back. I still think it's a crown jewel. I think, for a while you could kind of argue that we kind of got caught up in the Daytona 500, and I still think the Coke 600 is one as well. I think Throwback Weekend has really helped resurge it a little bit. It's going to be obviously different without I think they've sold out the 500 for a handful of years. I mean, it's one of those tracks that they put a lot of butts in the seats. I've been the last few years, and I'll be honest, there's been times where solely certain throwbacks were the reason that I went to the race.
Yeah.
I think that has been a hit. I think making it the opener for the playoffs makes it even better. It's going to add to the drama. The TV product's going to be really, really good today. I think it's really cool. And so we had to ask you, it's Throwback Weekend. Do you have a favorite throwback that you've seen this weekend? Who do you think really knocked it out of the park this year?
I think there's a lot of cool ones, and you kind of, I like to answer this question like when people ask what's your favorite track, you like each one of them for different characteristics, and I think all the
Right.
throwbacks are cool for a certain reason. However, this year I think it'd be silly not to say that Jimmy's is, one of the neatest, most most interesting kind of tip of the hats to any sports greatest ever. It'd be like LeBron wearing Kobe and Michael Jordan's jersey or something like that.
Right.
It's hard to. I think that's the closest thing to equate it to, and I think that's going to be my favorite tonight, watching Under the Lights especially.
Yeah, I know Armani, I'm sure, loves that. Armani's a big Jimmy fan, so I know he enjoyed it. I told him, I said, I think it's so weird because, like, from just looking at the car, it is kind of wonky, and it's not made – like, there's been more aesthetically pleasing paint schemes, but knowing the history of it makes it what it is. And I think it was – in his final year, Jimmy could have done anything that he wanted to run for himself, anything, and he chose to show his respect to everybody else. Some other notables I had, and then I know Armani's going to share a few he liked. I know Denny's is it's kind of a little different, but I like the Federal Express, the throwback to them. I thought that was cool. Yeah, I'm a little biased. I've lived the hardcore life of being a part-time Paul Menard fan. So seeing Ryan Blaney run the old blue and rainbow is pretty cool. J.J. Yaley and the Nerf paint scheme, that's pretty cool. And then I think everybody's got to acknowledge that Timmy Hill and that team killed it with the Phil Parsons paint scheme. I mean, that was awesome.
Yeah, you can look at them all, and like you just said, each one of them, there's something very cool and unique about each one of them that I think, it's what makes a fun race. Like you said earlier, it's what has kind of brought a little bit of spark back to this weekend, I think.
Yeah, Armani, which one's your favorite out there?
My second one is Alex Bowman's throwback, just because that's my favorite Jimmy Johnson paint scheme of all time. I love it. I love how it's back.
They did a good job.
I wish it was metallic and not a wrap, but other than that, I love the paint scheme. And my third favorite one hasn't really been talked about as much. Michael Annett's Oriole car. That car is just
that was sharp.
Yeah,
that thing was sharp.
And then I saw Zane Smith's truck's pretty badass too.
Yeah, what is it? It's
the Wood Brothers, I think.
And it's what year was that when they had the name right above the number?
I can't remember. I didn't see the year on it, but I know that. And then I had to give. I don't know if Thor Sport was joking about Matt Crafton running a throwback. I have no clue what that was.
Yeah, that was pretty damn funny. It was like throwback to Talladega 2009 or something.
Right. But usually at this part of the show, me and Armani make our race winning picks, and so we will let you kick us off, Jesse. Who do you think who do you expect to win the Southern 500 tonight? You got any feelings?
I'm going to go out on a branch and take the riskful guess of saying Denny Hamlin. I think his success at this track, and then on top of that, the season he's having, Chris Gabehart, I think, is a phenomenal crew chief and has really turned that team around. And I think, it's hard to bet against him tonight. I think Denny's my pick. My wild card or sleeper pick is Chase Elliott, though. I think he's had some speed recent weeks, and this is one of those races that it's long, it's grueling, and they always seem to be around there when they need to. They ran well here back in May, before he was wrecked. So I got Hamlin, and then a sleeper is Chase.
Who you got, Armani?
I'm going with Jesse Sleeper. I'm going with Chase Elliott. I think they're going to get redemption from the second Darlington race. I think they're going to punch their ticket into the round of 12, and maybe you might start seeing if that 9 car can really, sustain the pressure throughout the entire playoffs.
Yep.
Yeah. As a Chase Elliott fan, I really hope that happens. I still don't know if they still got the speed they necessarily need right now, but I hope he has some success. I'm also going to have to jump out on a limb, and I'm going to pick Kevin Harvick. It was hard to not pick Denny. I think one of those two were going to win it because I think both of them were the ones who won the races earlier this year. You could argue that without the 9 car getting spun, the 9 was probably going to end up getting to the 11 and passing him in the first race, or I think it might have been the second race. But they both won here already this year. They're both the best in the field right now. Denny's the best at Darlington. I think Kevin will be right behind him. So I think Kevin gives him a run for his money. So at this point, Jesse, we're going to make it all about you. We're going to talk with you and kind of your racing career. So we're going to kick it off. Obviously, your father was in the sport, Chad Little. Being around him, being around the sport since you were young, it's kind of weird because we see this dynamic so much these days with Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, kids that are growing up in the sport. We see it now with Braxton Bush, Keelan Harvick. And I've always imagined, like, I wonder what that is like. So you're a guy that knows. What is that like growing up around the racetrack, seeing your dad in those cars strapped in, battling every weekend and week out with some of the biggest names that's ever been in the sport?
Yeah, it's such a fun question for me to answer. And, people will ask me too sometimes, do you get tired of it? But you can never get tired of it. I owe so much of where I'm at in my career to to the history that my dad had racing in the Cup Series and pursuing the career the way he did. And, for me, it's a little interesting too and unique in the sense that when my dad retired or stopped racing, I was only about 5 or 6 years old. So I honestly don't even remember being at the racetrack when he was driving. I don't remember, the motorhome weekends and stuff like that. However, what is cool for me is growing up, the older I got, the 6, 7, 8 years old range, I was always aware of it and knew so much about it. And I kind of got to shape my own, imagination as to what that was like, what his career was like. And the older I got and the more I was around racing and involved with racing, I just fell in love with it at that point. When we would go to the tracks and people would come up to him and, ask for autographs. And I remember like seeing that after he was done racing and thinking like, wow, what was it like when he was racing? And so I kind of got to shape it into into my own imagination, like I said. But for me, it's still to this day impactful. It's hard to say, it's hard to explain how important it is in the sport to have the right guidance. And when you can have someone that was there, did it all, had success, be in your ear 24/7, it's incredible, the help on the track and away from the track.
Yeah, and obviously we've seen you kind of go through the ranks, and we've seen you obviously. I remember the first glimpses of you in that 97 truck. And I remember I would be just sitting at home, and it would be like a mile and a half, like Atlanta or Charlotte or something like that. And we knew the last name, but we hadn't seen a lot of Jesse Little. And so we're sitting there, but you guys would go out and like qualify 5th or 6th, running top 5, top 10 in the race. And I remember I actually have a cool story. So I think I was in the garages of Atlanta. It would have had to have been last year. And I'm assuming, I don't know. I think you and Cole Custer were talking together. And I was just, one of my first times ever in the garage. I was trying to, get a couple of signatures, this and that. And, I saw you guys talking. I was waiting for you guys to finish talking. And Cole saw me, he signed it. And you made a joke. You were like, you probably just want him to sign it. I won't worry about it. And I was like, no, I know who you are and all that. So that was pretty cool. I remember that. And then, Armani had a really cool question because we've seen you really kind of run. Obviously, we know the truck stuff part-time a lot. And now you're full-time in the Xfinity Series. And Armani came up with a brilliant question that, I personally haven't heard a driver ask before. I'm actually really intrigued to see this. So I'll let Armani take the reins here and kind of steer the boat.
All right, here's my question. So obviously, you run in the different series. You run trucks, Xfinity. I believe you also made a couple Cup starts like back in 2018.
Yep.
What's like the culture difference between like each different series? Like what's like the vibe, the culture, like as opposed to running a truck or an Xfinity car or a Cup car?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I've heard that asked before either or been asked it. But it's a great question because there's absolutely differences. And I would say from the truck, it's very, it's very, I don't want to say aggressive, but it's kind of hardcore. It's kind of the weekend warrior mentality. We work hard, we race hard, and what happens on the racetrack isn't really, it's because we're racing. We're here to do a job. We're racing hard, and it's kind of it's not so much big picture, I guess, as I've learned the Xfinity Series is. You race hard, and that's your job to do. Doesn't matter if you're second and first or 22nd and 23rd, you know. And the Xfinity Series, it's a little bit more, not gentleman's agreement, but, you know, a little bit more big picture. You know, I'm going to point this guy by because he's going to pass me inevitably. And, you know, I'm going to save less time. I'm going to save more time on my lap time letting him go than holding him up. It's a little bit more, I think, you know, thinking about, you know, getting to next week and points racing, and you know, everyone's kind of helping each other in a sense. You know, if you're 20th, you're not going to give the leaders a hard time if they're coming around to lap you.
Right.
You know, you're going to be smart. Whereas in trucks, I remember, you know, it was like, well, you shouldn't get mad lapping those guys. They're racing too. You know, it was kind of that mindset. And then in the Cup, when I made my first the two starts I made, you know, kind of times that mentality by 10 of the Xfinity Series. And it's, you know, don't essentially, if you're in the back half of the field, or if you're, you know, 30th on back, essentially it's do whatever you can to not be a headline. You know, you don't want to upset the top guys. You don't want to make a bad name for yourself. You're kind of doing what you can as a driver to, you know, to gain respect and not make anyone upset. But the culture is at that level. I would say from, you know, those two races I did was, you know, you're the best in the world. There's 40 teams that do this and 40 drivers, and they're the best in the world. In everything, every little detail, you know, even for the teams that I drove for, Jay Robinson and Marty Gaunt, you know, they're not necessarily Rick Hendrick, but even those teams, you know, every detail is paid attention to.
Right.
Every single box is checked. Every single I is dotted. Where, you know, Xfinity, it's not so much. In truck, it's, you know, well, you don't need a mirror, you know, just go race. It's kind of, you know, it's mentalities like that. But I would just say, you know, it's each progression of the ladder, each step of the ladder, it's a little bit more serious and a little bit more, you know, detail oriented and focused on.
Right. And I know I never heard it mentioned, and it's weird because I never heard this until really the last 2 weeks. I was listening to Sunday Money, the Core of the Joys podcast, and when he had Quinn Half on a few weeks ago after the Texas incident, and you know, it was weird that the way he phrased it was, when you're in that situation, you do whatever you have to do to not be on TV.
Yeah,
it never heard it phrased that way before, and I was like, I never thought of it that way before. Would you say, because I know you said the trucks just kind of go at it, and then Xfinity's kind of more gentleman's agreement. Does that come from the drivers, or is that from more of owners having a little bit different expectation?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's I would put it more on owners. You know, at the truck level, a lot of it was guys like me, where, you know, it's a family team, or you're a part of the, you know, you're a part of the team in some way. Whereas Xfinity, you know, the owners are established, and the owners have been there forever, and, you know, they will be there forever, and drivers come in, and so, you know, they're in charge, and that culture is, I think, instituted by owners. You know, for example, you know, and here's a good example when like Mike Harmon, when his trailer and car and stuff was stolen, you know, there was 3 or 4 teams, including my owner, Johnny Davis, that helped him with car parts and, you know, a truck and trailer and stuff like that. So it's very we take care of each other kind of idea,
Right.
and you don't want to ruin that on the racetrack.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. And that's one thing that me and Armani were talking about is the culture difference in trucks and Xfinity is like, when we thought about it, if you look at the truck series, the stars seem to actually be older than the stars that are in the Xfinity series. Yeah. I mean, you look at the front runners of trucks, it's Crafton, Sauter, Infanger, sprinkle in a couple of guys like an Austin Hill and a Brett Moffitt, and Brett Moffitt's really becoming a veteran too. But then you look at Xfinity, you know, it's Briscoe, it's Cindric, it's Gregson. I mean, guys that are younger than all of us that are kind of the stars there. And I'm sure that changes that dynamic as well, because, you know, we've seen it. You know, it doesn't take much to get under Johnny Sauter's skin if you race in a certain way. You know,
Exactly.
and the younger guys, it's the same, but I'm sure there's a little more give and take there. I'm sure that changes the pace of the race and how you handle those people as well.
Yeah, and I remember hearing, I think it was Junior or Jeff, or it might have, you know who it was? It was Clint Boyer. I was rewatching the Darlington race a couple days ago before this weekend for film, and Clint brought up a good point. It's like, you know, in the Xfinity Series, there's a lot of change, a lot of constant change, and you don't know how to race with guy. You know, you don't know how that guy races. Put it that way. Whereas like in truck, like you said, a lot of them are established, and as a driver, you know how this guy races, you know how he races. Whereas Xfinity, there's a lot of times where, you know, you might not know if you can go middle three wide with these two. You might not know if you can draft with this guy at Daytona, stuff like that. So I think that adds to the excitement that you hear the Xfinity Series bringing, and it adds to kind of the unexpectedness of having different winners like this year's we've seen.
Yeah, Armando, what you got?
I got another question. You know, going back to what we were talking about trucks and Xfinity, how different is it? Like we said in trucks, you know, they're the veterans like Kraft and Sauter and Finger. They've been around the sport longer. And that's opposed to like Xfinity, which is kind of like more directly like more like a ladder system where, you know, you got these guys trying to make a name for themselves to eventually get to the Cup Series. How different is it like having to drive between like, you know, veterans who, you know, are going to stay in that series, you know, until they retire versus drivers who are looking to, you know, make the jump to the big level?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think it brings up like a lot of the unexpectedness of it. You know, you essentially might not know if you could be teammates with that guy one day. Who knows?
Yep.
And so you want to keep that in mind, but at the same time, it's also an interesting dynamic because, you know, like you said, we're all fighting for a cup spot. So, you know, he's your competition, and he, in a roundabout way, is fighting for your job as well. So, you know, he's trying to take your job from you. And I think that just adds to the level of competition that you see, you know, from first through 20th.
Right. And one thing we had also looked at is, you know, JD Motorsports. So I was able to have a little bit of a conversation with Colby Howard a couple weeks ago, because Colby, he lives not far from where I'm from. And, you know, I know he's part-time for JD and working his way up through the system and trying to make a name for himself just like everybody else out here. And I know the dynamic from what I've learned from him, and you hear Ross talk about things when Ross used to be at JD Motorsports there, is I know the dynamic, you know, like you said, when you got in that truck, your whole goal was like, we're going to do everything we got to do to try to win this race, best finish we can get, really make a name for myself here. And I know, you know, obviously JD Motorsports, they want to go out and win races and compete for titles and playoffs. But look, I learned this from Colby and, you know, from interviews and stuff. I know a big part of JD's program is bring me the car home. If you've got, you know, I would rather you, you know, bring the car home and run 20th than wreck the car running for 12th or 13th. Bring me the car home in one piece. It's going to save us money. And so I imagine mentally you have to approach that. You've had to learn to approach that differently, because when you were running your truck, you know, a great day is a 6th, 7th place finish. Well, now a great day for JD might be a 15th, 16th place finish. And I know mentally, like, you know, in your mind, you're thinking 7th is way better than finishing 15th. But when you look at what the goal is, that was the goal. I mean, they're equivalent goals. Like, how do you have to adjust yourself to that?
Yeah, it's you know, it's very unique, and I've learned the last couple of weeks talking to people about it. I've learned that, you know, it's almost identical to the movie Moneyball. You know, we're playing the game differently than they are, and we constantly have to keep that in mind, you know, lap by lap. It's tough. It took me a little bit, but, you know, I'm to the point where I'm almost reassessing my situation every single lap, depending on who I'm racing around, who I'm racing with. You know, I ask myself, should I be racing with this guy, or should he, you know, on paper be able to beat me? I'm not going to take a chance racing 14th with, you know, I'm not going to take a chance holding off a junior motorsports car for 14th when, I know he should beat me, and he might get upset and, ship us into the wall or something.
Right.
And so, it is tough at times, but I think you have to race with that mindset, and honestly, I'll be the first to say it. It has done way more good for me than I would have ever imagined. Having the mentality of, hey, just take what the car can give you and bring it home. Heck, man, yesterday was like our 18th top 20 of the year in 23 races.
Yep.
We have like 8 or 9 top 15 finishes this year. So it's done wonders for me just having that mindset, because you minimize your mistakes and you take yourself out of situations that, could cost you a lot more than what it could reward you, if that makes sense.
Right.
At the end of the day, I hate to say it, finishing 16th versus 13th, isn't the biggest difference in the world. And if you're finished 13th, has to depend on you racing your ass off for 20 laps and, either blowing a tire or, rubbing fenders with a guy, and then you cut a tire, that doesn't help anybody. And Colby and I have talked about it a lot, because as a young driver, it's hard to almost fix what you've grown up your whole life doing, which is,
Right.
be the best every single lap. And now it's looking at the forest rather than looking at one tree, and seeing the big picture all the time. So.
Right. And I know Colby had told me before, you're so accustomed to, I've got to go up here and try to do what I can to win the race. I need to drive towards the front. I need to do this. And, one thing that I thought about is, people forget, well, they don't forget, but Ross Chastain is only like 3 years removed from being a full-time driver for JD.
Yeah.
And I think you noted something that people are starting to realize. Look at a guy like Matt DiBenedetto. You look at a guy like Ross. They had to go in situations where they had to take care of their stuff. And now the single reason the Wood brothers brought him on was they know he's going to take care of his stuff. And now he's made his first playoff. And I didn't know this until I looked it up. So you right now have the same exact average finish as Ross Chastain did in 2017, right before Ross blew up. And so what is that, is that any kind of motivation to know that, you or whether it's Colby, whether it's anybody, I know Ryan Vargas has been a guy that's been running part-time for JD, really kind of learning the ropes. But a guy like you who's full-time, taking care of their stuff, does it motivate you to know that you could be that Ross Chastain guy 2-3 years from now? We've seen guys go to JD Motorsports, make a name for themselves, and now look at him. I mean, he's going to be one of the biggest free agents. I mean, I don't think it happens, but Ross Chastain went from being a guy that no one really knew much about to could he go to the freaking 48 car? I mean, he's blown up that much in the last few years. Does that motivate you knowing that could happen?
Yeah, no, you're 100% on the bullseye there. That is probably the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to do this deal with Johnny is, I told myself the potential here is a lot better than a lot of other places, and I actually rode down to Darlington with them yesterday morning, and Ross and I talked a lot and figured out that, for guys like us, there really is no better route than how we're approaching it. For guys like us that don't have a big pocketbook or whatever, deep pockets. And, to answer your question, the motivation is there. I think, I constantly remind myself of that. Ross, Ryan Preece, Landon Castle, those are the 3 guys that directly were associated with Johnny, and look at him now, and or look at where Landon was and the opportunities he's gotten. And then, like you said, fast forward another 2 or 3 years, and DiBenedetto and Corey LaJoie and guys that have capitalized on gaining experience in Xfinity, getting more out of their equipment than they should, showing people in the industry that they have talent and they have the ability to maintain equipment. And, the biggest thing in this sport is the timing. And so if I can do a good job of staying relevant and staying doing my job, not wrecking race cars, finishing top 15s, then I got to be there for the timing to work out. And I think those two things motivate me more than anything.
Armani, you got anything else, buddy?
No, I don't really got any more questions.
So, yeah, the biggest thing I was going to look at, and I know we'll let you, because my guy Armani, he's got to get to work. I know we're all getting tuned in for the truck race. I hate I'm going to miss it because I'm traveling back home, but the trucks need to be at Darlington every year.
It's going to be fun.
I'm sure it's going to be a great race. So my kind of the last question, and then we'll be able to let you go, is I know you can't give too many details, and free agency is always a thing that you've got to kind of keep wraps. But just for your fans out there, will we see Jesse Little at the track next year, or do you have some good things in the works to make sure that, like you said, staying relevant moving forward, and hopefully one day hitting that timing just right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing everything we can to work with our partners and Johnny and try to come back. And I think it'd be the best thing for me. And having had experience at these racetracks, next year I can only imagine how much better I'll feel at a lot of these races. It would have been nice to be able to have a weekend of practice and qualifying and stuff like that. But everyone else is in the same boat. So I'd love to be in the Xfinity Series again and capitalize one more year and get all these get laps at all these tracks and see what happens with the implementation of the new Cup car, and kind of try to position myself as strategically and as importantly as I can to stay relevant, stay in the discussions, and maximize my value in the sport as much as I can. So I'm trying my best to be back next year, and hopefully we'll have some news here soon in the next month or so, but we're working on it for sure.
Awesome. And I didn't think about it till you mentioned it. And then I promise this will be the last one. You pointed out something I hadn't even thought about. You pointed out something I hadn't even thought about. So, the focus with the next gen car is that really the only people that's going to be affected are the Cup guys. I didn't even think about this. Like, I'm sure there are Xfinity drivers. I mean, a guy that I like to see have success in Xfinity is Noah. I think Noah's a very raw guy, but I think Noah Gregson's very talented. I didn't even think about it. If you're looking at guys like him, Cindric, Briscoe, because we don't know what's going to happen, your first year could be with this next gen car. And how is the next gen car affecting guys that are maybe in the Xfinity Series or the truck level, or guys looking to move forward?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think even a statement that Noah put out when they just signed their new deal for next year with juniors is, they wanted one more year of Xfinity before the new car came out. And
Right.
put it this way, it's in NASCAR, it's all trickle down. So if it affects Cup, it absolutely affects Xfinity, and it definitely affects truck in some roundabout way. So I think, we'll see Cup drivers that it'll, we'll look at it this way too. Keselowski only did a 1-year deal because he wants to see what happens with the new car. So we'll see drivers do different things because of that new car, and it'll indirectly affect Xfinity guys. We might see some older ones retire. We might see some seats open up. We might see, who knows? And so I think for me, it's just being ready for that position.
Oh, hold on. Will left him and think he got some problems or something.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Oh, what the?
There we go.
Oh, there we are.
He's back.
Little technical difficulties.
Yeah, but we're good. But cool. I didn't think of it that way. And Jesse, we greatly appreciate it, man. Heck of a run yesterday. We'll be watching you. I know you guys are going to need a little bit of a push here to get in the postseason, but we wish you the best of luck. I know it's some short track racing. I know that's a lot of times a little bit of an equalizer. So best of luck to you guys. Obviously, we hope to see you back next year and many years to come, and hopefully maybe one day running on Sundays full time. So we appreciate you taking your time out, and enjoy the truck race. And I know we're all three going to be enjoying the Southern 500 tonight.
That's right, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. We'll have to do this again soon.
Definitely.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We'll definitely have you back on, man. Appreciate you.
Yep, you guys have a good day. Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day.